Thank you very much, Brian, for joining me on the Sami Parvez show. It is great to have you again here.
Well, happy to be here. Thank you for having me on.
My pleasure, sir. So let's begin with liberal leadership race. Is Mark Carney yesterday announced his leadership run in Edmonton, and Chrystia Freeland also said today that she will announce her leadership on this Sunday. I think Karina Gold is also expected may announce her ra- leadership race on Sunday or maybe next week. Let's begin with Mark Carney run. So how do you see like his announcement in Edmonton?
Well, I think that yeah, I think it was the world's worst secret that he was planning on running. Um, I think that there's a lot of people, the prime minister included, who are kind of hoping to see this as a coronation, kind of like when Trudeau himself became Liberal leader, it was seen as a coronation. So I think a lot of people are expecting the same thing to happen. Um, Krista Freeland's going to upset that. I think it's going to be between the two of them. I think Karina Gould and Wilkinson and Chandra, whoever else is decided to go in there. I think all they're going to do is just split votes between Carney and Freeland. I think those two are going to be the two front runners. And I think those are the ones that you're going to see the majority of the attacks and everything else directed against. There was kind of one of the funnier moments before the Freeland appearance. Somebody drove a probably one of the most ghastly kit car stretch limousines I've ever seen in my life.
Mhm.
It was modeled after a Rolls Royce, pulled in to the convention center where the announcement was taking place and then left. So there's a lot of questions about. Obviously, Carney was not bored. Even he, has enough sense not to show up in a rented limousine with a taxi plate on it, which is
Mm.
the kind of thing that you take the prom or something.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of questions about who did that. Was it just a limo company trying to get free advertising? Was it was it a political rival or opponent
Mhm.
to Carney doing that to try to embarrass him or try to distract people? And if that was the case, then where did that come from? Did it come from Freeland's camp? That was probably one of the more interesting theories I've seen floated was that it was, employed by Freeland to try to embarrass Carney or something. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's interesting to think about. But yeah, that's it just goes to show politics is politics. It's just a game, and it's people take it a lot more seriously than I think that they should a lot of times, especially when it comes to this sort of thing. But yeah, I think it's going to be between Carney and Freeland. I think the other candidates are just thanks for showing up, but there's no way that Jonathan Wilkinson's going to be the next prime minister or next liberal.
Mm.
Karina Gould or whoever else is throwing their hat in. But yeah, Carney and Freeland they're going to be the two to watch. And I think those are going to be the two that most people and most journalists are going to be paying attention to.
Mhm. Yeah, you are absolutely right. So how do you see like is I don't know like whether you watched earlier today David Creighton was saying so Carney was surrounded by all other diverse folks, like it could be Carney was the only one who was white person on that stage. Maybe I'm wrong, but mostly were like like from non-white people. So was there a message to sending to diverse or diaspora community that I'm here for you, as we saw like what Prime Minister Justin Trudeau did in his last 10 years or 11 years leadership?
It's interesting that people would try to inject race into it, particularly when it comes to the Liberal Party, which has elected nothing but white males as party leader, and it's in its entire history. The Conservatives, had Kim Campbell. They've had other leaders as well. The Canada's only female prime minister was Conservative. Um, but yeah, it's interesting that people would inject race into it. If they're looking for diversity of candidates, they're going to be disappointed. It's just going to be, white person versus white person. It's going to be
Hmm.
Freeland versus Carney
Yeah.
and or woman. People are going to, it's going to be interesting to see if Freeland's campaign is going to parallel, you know, so the her story campaign of Hillary Clinton.
Hmm.
How much of an issue will gender play between the two in this race? Is that going to be enough for Freeland to edge out Carney? You've got a party that are they married to they're into the diversity issue. They want to have finally a female leader for the party, or are they going to elect a male? Are they going to pick somebody who quite honestly was groomed for this position for a
Hmm.
long time. He was a central banker both here and in the UK. You know, the Liberals have been trying to get him on board just as an MP for a long time. So, um, and then that'll kind of bring up an interesting thing too about if Carney does win, you've got a prime minister who's not an MP.
Hmm.
Is going to be ruling from ruling the country from the viewing galleries in the House of Commons, kind of like how Naheed Nenshi is doing, ruling the opposition NDP in Alberta. He's the leader of the NDP, but he doesn't have a seat.
Yep.
So, he's watching from the galleries just like the rest of us. So it's it's going to be interesting to see how the campaigns go. We've already seen, you know, you know, Chandra, the candidate who said he didn't think it was important to know French, which of course
Hmm.
went down like a lead balloon in Quebec. It's shows right there that anybody with you know, that low amount of self-awareness, has no place being prime minister. Um, so yeah, it's going to be interesting, but like I said before, it's going to be either Freeland or
Hmm. Yeah, but Carney is also like holds three citizenship, Canadian, British, and Irish. But like we saw like back in 2019 when Andrew Scheer was conservative leader, it was a huge issue for media, but we don't hear anything with respect to that. Do you think it would play later on about his citizenship?
Well, that's definitely going to be a tool in Freeland's tool belt there. I think that that'll definitely come up. It hasn't come up in the media so far right now because Andrew Scheer is a member of the Conservative Party, and the local press gallery seems to not really give a shit unless it's a
Mm.
conservative or something. But it's yeah the that's definitely going to come up. I think definitely during the debate it's going to come up. I'm not going to say it's Canada's first prime minister with dual citizenship because there was no such thing as Canadian citizenship
Yep.
for the first portion of Canada's history. But it's yeah, it's going to come up, and does that disqualify Mark Carney from being a good leader and a good prime minister? I don't think so. Um, it's he's not a rank amateur. He's been around. He had a Bank of Canada for so many years. It's any questions of allegiance or whatever. It's ridiculous. But it's you're going to see some interesting attack ads come out. You're going to see interesting. These sort of high profile leadership races are always interesting when the members of the party go after each other.
Hmm.
It's you kind of see politics at its most raw. You see attacks for people in their own party that you normally see during an election against the opposition. So if things get too dirty, it's you've got a party that's fractured anyways. I don't really think it matters. The liberal caucus, can't be more dysfunctional, can't be more divided than it is right now. It's in pieces thanks to the prime minister. So I don't think that any rancor between the Freeland and the Carney camps is going to matter much. Um, Mainly because if Carney loses, wins and loses the election, he's out of politics. And Freeland is, she probably, if she runs again, she'll probably win her seat.
Hmm.
But she'll be, the leader or a member of a broken party. She might probably be only a handful of liberal MPs to survive the next election. So. yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Hmm. Yeah, and what do you take from Carney relationship with Justin Trudeau? You shared a couple of pictures of Carney meeting with Justin Trudeau at his office. So, is there a closeness? I think there were some also report that Katie Telford is calling MPs on behalf of Mark Carney, like to support Mark Carney. Was it true? Like, how do you take all of this one? Because Trudeau was saying for a long time that he's trying to get Carney into federal politics, but he was always denying. But suddenly he came in. So, do you think that Carney is the right hand man of Justin Trudeau just to replace him?
Yeah, that's definitely a safe bet. I don't see Trudeau supporting Krista Freeland. You know, she's kind of responsible for this whole mess. Her resignation was kind of the
Mhm.
touch point of everything that's happening now and the disintegration of the party and him stepping down as leader. I'm sure that he probably is not very happy with her right now. Um, that being said, Trudeau's made no secret of his affection and appreciation for Carney. He's openly admitted that he's tried to get him to join politics for a while, and he's always said no. Why he's decided to do it this time, I don't know. I mean, the guy's rich. The guy could do, a couple of speaking engagements a year and be
Mhm.
very comfortable. He doesn't even do that anyways. He's one of these guys that doesn't fly commercial anywhere. If you want him to speak somewhere, you got to send a jet for him. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, it's I don't think it's any secret that Carney's Trudeau's man. Trudeau's smart enough not to admit that. He's smart enough not to have a horse in this race. His party's divided enough. The last thing they need is, Trudeau taking sides in a leadership battle. But yeah, I think that anybody who says that Trudeau isn't Carney's man, doesn't know what they're talking about. It's he's definitely rooting for him behind the scenes.
Mhm.
That rumor about Telford making calls on his behalf, I believe that was my colleague Bryan reported that. He did reach out to, as far as I know, he reached out to the PMO beforehand and didn't get comment back, but they eventually denied it. Apparently, the PMO was quite furious that that was reported. Um,
Mhm.
whether or not that denial means anything. It's impossible to trust anything that comes out of the PMO these days. I trust that she was angry. I think she was more angry that she got found out than something that was false. I have no proof one way or the other that she did make the calls, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if she did, and I wouldn't be surprised if denial was bullshit.
Mhm. And what do you take the picture you shared?
Which
Justin
picture?
Trudeau with Mark Carney. Didn't you share them or someone else shared them on
I
X?
might have, I might have retweeted it. I think Brian Lilly originally.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Sorry, my apologies. Yeah,
Yeah,
so what do you take from those pictures?
Well, those were explained to be, photos from a while ago, and I don't think those photos explain or justify anything. There's tons of photos of people having sit-down
Mhm.
discussions with the prime minister, people shaking hands with the prime minister, people having selfies with the prime minister. I mean, just the fact that Mark Carney, who is already a presence in Canada for decades to begin with, would have a sit-down chat with the prime minister is completely and totally reasonable. I don't think there's anything to those at all. You know, there's pictures of me with the prime minister. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean anything though. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be
Yep,
the next.
yep, yep.
I mean, I'm the favorite to be the next liberal leader, but yeah, I think that yeah, it's. I don't think anybody who would say that that Carney isn't Trudeau's name would be wrong. I definitely think that is the case.
Hmm. Yeah, and so Carney French is not good, right?
That's what I've heard. My French is non-existent. My 7-year-old little girl is her French is so much better than mine.
Hmm.
I have heard that. I heard that his French wasn't all that great, but a lot of people's French isn't that great. Like I don't know French all that well. I can kind of tell when someone's French isn't that bad, and when it's start pronouncing like 1988.
Hmm.
comment t'appelles tu, bonjour, je m'appelle Bryan,
Hmm.
it's, us shitty French speakers can, we can sniff each other out. But,
Hmm.
it's the fact that he's conversing in French is good. It's better than some of the other candidates in this race.
Yeah.
You know, um, just yeah, I don't think that'll be a huge factor, anyways. I think that you know, I
Yeah,
think
but
Liberals are
it.
going to Quebec anyways. But
Mhm.
I don't know if appealing Quebec is really going to be a factor in this leadership race. Totally
Mhm.
honest.
Yeah, but it is mandatory. You must be bilingual to be the prime minister, or not. Like, is it mandatory to be bilingual to be the prime minister of Canada?
I don't think it's a law for it. I don't think that there's a restriction on that. If that was the case, then there would be restrictions on running for any political office unless you're bilingual. But it could be in the party's charter. I don't know. Um, but I think it's important to be
Mhm.
bilingual. I think that I don't think that Quebec would definitely not tolerate having a prime minister who wasn't bilingual, who wasn't able to speak French. Just look what Mary Simon is going.
Mhm. Yeah.
She, she's bilingual. One of those languages is not French.
Mhm.
And one of the things that she promised to do when she became vice regal was to learn French. And it came pretty clear that she maybe had a couple lessons and just effed off the rest. She wasn't, was that trip to Quebec City recently, where I think it was last year or the year before. I can't remember exactly when, yeah, she couldn't even have a conversation in French. And if, you've been governor general for as long as she has, and if she's been taking regular lessons, you should be able to at least have a conversation with somebody.
Mhm.
No one's asking her to conjugate verbs or anything like that. But yeah, it's yeah, I don't think a lot of Canada would tolerate a prime minister that wasn't bilingual. Quebec,
Mhm.
for the most part, New Brunswick. There's lots of francophone communities around Canada, and Alberta. There's a few. It's French is part of Canadian culture. It's part of Canada.
Yep.
It's
Mhm.
it does a disservice to anybody who thinks that being not being bilingual isn't important to being prime minister.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Like what one of yeah, you are absolutely right about that one. Like, being bilingual is very important, at least for being a prime minister. So Trump is taking office on Monday, and Chrystia Freeland announced her leadership on Sunday. And so, how do you see like those Trump tariff threats? So, would it be great concern? Would those tariffs would be affected on day one when Trump takes oath?
Um, it remains to be seen if he's bluffing or if he's serious. All indications suggest that he's serious. I think it's a threat that, whether he's serious or not, I think it's a threat that Canada needs to take seriously. Um, and the problem is, and it kind of that's what I'm seeing right now with, I was at the First Minister's meeting on Wednesday, um, and everybody going in was saying, all tools are on the table, and anything we can do to retaliate against these. Danielle Smith, Alberta Premier, was the lone holdout. She was, you know, natural resources are provincial property, and she's within her rights to dictate how Alberta's oil is controlled. That's just the way it's always been. People are calling her a traitor. People are saying it's time for Alberta to step up for Team Canada. But I was listening to an old colleague of mine, Rick Bell. He was a columnist for the Calgary Sun. He was speaking on local Ottawa talk radio today, and he had a very good point. He said, everybody says Alberta's not there for Team Canada, but when was Team Canada there for Alberta?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Canada's wealth comes from Alberta. Alberta. I lived in Alberta for over a decade. I understand the resentment a lot of Albertans have for Alberta, and a lot of the resentment is justified. Alberta is kind of like it's the golden goose of Canada. We take the golden eggs, and when those golden eggs dry up, we get angry. It's I think that retaliation is definitely a way to go when it comes to meeting this tariff threats. The only the only thing that Trump would understands is strength and power, which is why I think that Doug Ford standing up to Trump it's been a great thing. It's finally someone in Canada is stepping up for Canada, but but yeah, I think that the premiers have every right to determine how their resources are used and if they're used as ammunition in a trade war. A trade war that's going to be devastating, by the way. I think it's going to be devastating for both Canada and the US. Um, you know, whether those damages in the US will be understood and realized, I don't know. But yeah, whenever I think it's a lot of Canadians who are looking forward to good things with the Trump presidency. You know, if things go the way they are, it's not going to be good news for Canada if these tariffs go through. It's going to be devastating for both sides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, tariffs are not good. Like then the consumer, like citizens or taxpayers, are going to pay the price at the end of the day. But so what? So how Canada retaliate? Like how they going to put the tariffs? Is it going to like whatever US would put on, or it would be they would have their own mechanism, like they would like put on particular items or products?
I'm not sure. I've to be totally honest, I haven't been following that story today. I understand some possibly some measures released. I'm not sure though. Yeah, it's really not a good question for me. I don't really know. I
Mhm.
apologize.
Okay, okay. But like, so how do you analyze the Daniel Smith step for not signing that a statement, like which was released by Team Canada, like Prime Minister and other premier except Daniel Smith. So as you said, like one of your colleague said, like Albert, like Canada was not there when Alberta was in crisis. Like Alberta always suffer, as you also mentioned that you lived there for a decade. How things work down there, they don't understand it. So, how do you analyze his hard step?
I don't agree with people who are branding her as a traitor. I think she's doing exactly what a premier should. She's looking out for the best interests of her province.
Hmm.
Um, and the problem is that this isn't a question that can be answered with a single answer. I think that Canada is a diverse enough country, and the provinces are as distinct and different from each other, and have a lot different needs and responsibilities and wants and 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 resources. So yeah, I think that it's going to be interesting because the other issue too is that a lot of the oil that the little bit of oil, Western Canada oil that comes east, goes through pipelines that go through the U.S. Those Enbridge lines, like to get from Hardisty, Alberta to Sarnia, those pipelines don't go across Canada; they cut through the U.S. like through
Hmm.
Michigan and the Great Lakes states and stuff. So it's going to be a lot more complicated than just fuck yous, turn off the taps. It doesn't work like that. It's cutting off electricity exports. That's straightforward. That's just a matter of just throwing the switch and you know
Hmm.
whether contracts and things like that are involved. I have no idea. There might be legal reasons why they can't just throw the switch. I don't know if there's some sort of like a contract or something between the U.S. and Canada or the different power providers and things like that. But you know, it's just not as simple as turning off the taps. And I think Daniel Smith understands that. I think it's too tempting to use Canada's oil as a weapon in this fight. But at the same time, it's like we are we both rely on each other
Hmm.
for you
Yeah.
know Um, if they decide to put a tariff on our oil, it's gonna impact them. It's gonna drive up their gas prices because that's a chunk of import. I think it's the U.S.'s biggest oil importer is Canada. They get almost all of its or a good chunk of its imported oil from Canada. So
Hmm.
it's we'll have to see what happens with the ripple effects between the two countries. But anybody who thinks the U.S. is gonna try to fill a non-existent trade gap by taxing its biggest trade partner, it's
Hmm.
ludicrous. It's gonna bite them in the ass.
Yeah, and I heard, I'm not sure if it is true. Are Justin Trudeau and Keir Starmer, like UK Prime Minister, are the only world leader who are not uh, sent out invitation for Trump inauguration?
I haven't heard that either. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there are. I know Daniel Smith's going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Leave another premium up there. I'm not too sure about that. I was caught up I was writing a local Toronto story today, so I've been completely out of the loop today when it comes to sort of developing happenings. There's a
Mm-hmm.
developments and happenings today, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if those are the two that didn't get invites. But
Mm-hmm.
it's largely ambassadors and dignitaries that go to these things. So,
Yeah.
I don't know how much of a snub that is with the PM not being invited, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I know like you don't cover like provincial politics, but I was reading that Doug Ford may call an election as early as February. So how do you see this election? Like, would it be a good move, or would is there enough chances for Doug Ford to get back, or maybe we would have another minority government with other parties?
well, I understand why he's doing it because he's trying to consolidate a new mandate right now. The opposition parties are still in pieces. The Terry Liberals are a big mess, and the NDP is still, they're too small to be a big threat. So, there was an election today. Doug Ford would easily and handily win.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the problem is that this year we're looking at two. If that's the case, Ontario is going to be looking at two big elections. We got the provincial election, and then we got the federal election, which is,
Mm-hmm.
you know, regardless of what happens when Parliament comes back, it has to happen before October 25th. So, that's guaranteed to happen this year. Um, I think that, and I don't know this for a fact, but I would assume that it would be foremost on their mind is getting theirs out of the way first. Because the problem is that when you have two elections that close together, you get a lot of fatigue. So, you get one election campaigns are so freaking annoying, and people just are tired of getting pounded on the head with politics. And by the election day comes, everybody's just relieved it's over. Thank God Canadian election campaigns are so short. The U.S.
Mm-hmm.
They start electing their
Yeah.
president years beforehand. And just by the time election day comes around, everybody's just sick to death of it. But yeah, so if that is the case, if Ontario say has like a March or April election, um, with the federal election most likely not soon that far after, people are going to be, it's going to impact who votes in the federal election. People are going
Mm-hmm.
to be it's going to voter apathy in Canada is already low. You're going to see a lot of people not showing up at the polls. You're going to see the turnout numbers to be really really low. Whoever comes second, and if Ford is going to have his way, if all these indications that it's going to be an earlier election, then yeah, you're going to see that. Worse, even still, you're going to have overlapping election campaigns. People already have are so clueless when it comes to how politics works. A lot of people confuse MPs and MPPs. It's not because they're stupid. It's just that outside of the bubble of Ottawa, people really don't give a shit about
Yep.
politics.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm sure a lot of people have problem, picking out Pierre Poilievre's face in in a lineup. But yeah, if you have these campaigns that are that close to each other, people are going to be going to their federal election poll wondering why that their favorite for MPP isn't on there. Like, oh, I really like
Mm-hmm.
Crab Meat Sarkaria. Where the hell is he? He's not on my list. And
Yeah.
it's so confusing to a lot of people because in the circle that we're in, it's so easy for us to think that everybody cares about what we care about, but really, people like most normies, most NPCs in the world, they don't really care about politics. They love prime ministers until they don't, and that's it's not like there's some sort of big like like big blue revolution that's pushing Trudeau out and giving Pierre Poilievre high numbers. It's just that things are shit right now. And,
Hmm.
shit, they blame whoever's in power. So yeah, I
Yep.
think that I think that's a factor. I don't think that's talked about enough. I think that whoever goes second is, the voter apathy is going to kick in, and I think that particularly when you have an election that is this far apart
Yep.
with the conservatives polling so much higher than the liberals, people are going to say either, I'm not going to bother voting because I even though I support the conservatives, enough people are going to vote for them or whatever. And that's the kind of thinking that loses elections. We saw kind of a variant of that in Alberta, uh, a decade ago when Rachel Notley became premier. It wasn't because of some big orange communist socialist revolution that in Alberta. It was just because people hated the PCs and people hated the Wild Rose even more. So they said,
Hmm.
screw you, I'll just vote for my local guy or vote for NDP because who would ever think the NDP would ever win a provincial election in Alberta?
Yep.
And guess what? It happened. And it wasn't some sort of big like I said, it wasn't sort of big like twisted left, like sort of a red revolution marching the cornfields in the mountains of Alberta. It was just voter apathy and you know, voter fatigue. Just voters are just tired of being preached and lied to. So, yeah, I think apathy is definitely going to be a factor in either of the elections, but it really depends on who goes first.
Hmm. Yeah, and so I need to ask you one thing. I don't know, like, if you really cared about it or not, but what is the, like, I know, like, you gave a good example about low voter turnout, like, some folks are just sick of with either party, they know, like they just don't want to vote the other party, so just stay at home, like, don't vote. But we always see that the voter turnout is always low. So is there any other factor that it does not encourage Canadians to get out and vote?
There's nothing like it. Canadians on the whole don't really care that much about politics. People who vote vote. It's not like the US where they have turnout issues too, but it's not seen as like a sort of like a patriotic duty to get out and vote. You know, should Canada be like other countries and have mandatory voting? No, I don't think so.
Hmm.
Um, I think that I I think you might get a higher turnout than you normally would in this federal election just because of how this isn't a boring election. This is kind of an exciting election. There's a lot of drama in this election. There's
Hmm.
a lot of interesting storylines. Got cabinet ministers resigning on the day of economic statements and bringing down governments, and now you've got billionaire outsiders coming in, and scrappy upstarts trying to be prime minister who doesn't think it's important to know French to be prime minister. You know,
Hmm.
it's dramatic. It's a dramatic election. It's an interesting election. So I think that might get people to be a bit more interested than they normally would. But like I said before, it's that's all fine and good until you factor in the provincial election. Ontario decides federal elections. So I think that the Ontario factor is going to weigh in. And if you've got Ontario voters going to the polls, just a few months after electing a new Ontario government, and then putting up with all the nonsense that goes along with that, yeah, people are just going to say, screw it. I'm not going to bother voting,
Hmm.
and that's when Canada should start to consider election reform,
Hmm.
maybe
Yep.
get rid of first past the post, like
Hmm.
Trudeau promised.
Yep.
Uh, maybe look at alternatives like online voting or telephone voting or
Mhm.
some sort of alternative to schlepping out to the polling stations, which is a pain in the ass these days. We're a lazy society. We don't want to go out
Yep.
and have to.
Mhm.
So, it's yeah, I think that that there's ways and means of getting people to be more interested in voting, and I think one of those, and I think election reform is a big part of it.
Yep. Yeah, so last thing, like, how do you see, so, like, the parliament would resume on March 24th, and Singh said that he would support no matter who is the leader. But do you think like Singh is going to vote in this no confidence motion?
I think that I think that Jagmeet Singh has used up all the credibility he's had. I don't think anybody believes a word he says. Like he entered into the agreement 2 years ago, which is fine. That's how minority governments work.
Hmm.
Wasn't a coalition, but it was a supply and
Confidence.
confidence agreement. Um, he publicly tore that up, but he continued to support the government. So I think he's used up any credibility that he's had. He's claiming right now that that he'll overturn, that he'll he'll introduce a motion of his own, but he hasn't commented on if he'll support motions introduced by other parties. Is Singh's support of a non-confidence motion dependent on the NDP being the genesis of that? Are they going to be interested in opening negotiations with the hated conservatives? Will they support a conservative motion? Does Jagmeet Singh have enough of a desire to go to the polls as to support a conservative motion? I'm sure a lot of NDP fans would not be in favor of that. They would see that as an NDP endorsement of a conservative
Hmm.
policy. But the ends, you know, will the ends justify the means for them to do that? Will if the government's going to fall, doesn't matter how it happens. You know, I think Singh's been very careful about that. I think that this is just pure speculation on my part. I think that he'll use that and say, no, I'm not supporting the motion because it's not a motion that we tabled. I don't think he'll say that directly out, but I think that'll definitely be a factor.
Hmm.
I'm sure the conservatives will be happy to support any motion that gets out there that triggers an election, and
Yep.
Locke is feeling the same way. But yeah, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Jagmeet Singh is the most powerful man in Ottawa. He's been that for years, and he still remains to. And like he just because he says he'll support a motion doesn't, or he'll introduce a motion doesn't necessarily mean he'll support any motion. I think
Hmm.
that's going to be the question coming back. I think it's inevitable this government's going to fall. It's just a matter of is it going to be by sword or is it going to be by the guillotine?
Hmm. Yeah, you said a powerful sentence like Jagmeet Singh is the most powerful person in the art. Why he has been like for few years and still he's using it, and maybe Singh wants to get the credit for dissolving this parliament, like he needs his own motion. No one knows like until let's wait and watch until March 24th. And once again, thank you so much, Brian, for taking the time to joining me this evening. Hopefully looking forward to seeing you again next week. It will be very interesting when President Trump takes office.
Yeah, definitely. I'm always happy to be on. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure, sir. Thank you and have a good weekend, and see ya. You take care. Bye.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.